Okay, so here is the third page of our Chapter 9 study guide. This will help you do the Khan Academy that I assigned for today as well. Okay, so we have learned a lot about quadratic equations over the past several months, last semester, this semester. So we've seen quadratic equations in a few different ways. Now, the first way is standard form. So an example of that would be, let's say, 2x squared minus 5x plus 4 equals 0. Now, whenever we have this form always tells us right away the y-intercept. Okay, and this is part of the Khan Academy as well, what the Khan Academy will be asking you to do. So it'll say like, okay, what does this form tell you? This one easily tells us the y-intercept whenever it's written in standard form. So this y-intercept here is 0, 4. Okay. Now factored form, this would look something like, and by the way, the a, like, it could just be a 1. So it could just be x squared, right? Like just here, I don't have to put an a there, but I could. So let's say that my a here was 3. And then my factors inside, let's do x minus 2, and let's do a 2x plus 3 equals 0. And sorry, my throat's kind of scratchy this morning. Okay, so what this tells us right away are the x-intercepts whenever it's in factored form like this. Because we could set each of these equal to 0, each of the factors equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0. You would add 2 to both sides, and we get x equals 2. So 2, 0 is one of my x-intercepts. Okay? I'm going to zoom in a little bit because this one's going to take some more work, so I need to write smaller. So then the other one is 2x plus 3 equals 0. So here first we have to subtract 3. We have 2x equals negative 3. Divide both sides by 2. We get x equals negative 1.5. Okay, negative 3 divided by 2 is negative 1.5. So my other x-intercept is negative 1.5, 0. So on Khan Academy, it'll ask you to solve for the x-intercepts, and sorry, this is what I get for recording this early. Well, it's not early, but recording in the morning as soon as I wake up. I'm gonna yawn, I'm sorry. So they'll ask you, what is the lesser x? And it's just so that it's not just a multiple choice question you actually have to put in your work. So this one, what I would type in for the lesser x is negative 1.5. And then the greater x would be 2. So they're asking you for different x-intercepts there. Most quadratics have 2, but remember, sometimes they can only have 1 or sometimes they have none. All right, so this one over here is the newer form. This is vertex form. Okay, this is in vertex form. So just remember that all these names here, this is standard form. This one is factored form. And then this one here is vertex form. Vertex form really helps you graph. Okay, so what vertex form gives us is the vertex. All right, so we learn that the vertex is h, k. Okay, so this one, here's an example. What if we have like negative 2 times x minus 3 squared plus 4 equals 0. Okay, what this one tells us is the vertex. Your h, so if we have, this one is the vertex. And it's always h, k. And since in our formula the h here is negative, we always take the opposite sign of what we see here. So since this says negative 3, The opposite of that is just 3, because it would be x minus positive 3. And I do a whole video on that as well. I believe up here, yeah, for pages 1 and 2 of the study guide. So be sure to review that right here, vertex form on page 2. Okay, I did that in the other video. So then the K is nice because it is whatever it is. If it's a positive 4, the K is a positive 4. And remember, guys, you can always graph this in Desmos to see what it looks like. Okay? And then you can see that your vertex here, this one's going to be an upside down because of that -2. But the vertex, actually, this one would be super skinny. I forgot about that. The 2 would make it skinny. The vertex here would be the point 3, 4. So it'd be this point right here. Okay, so let's do a few practice problems. So it says here, completing the square. Sorry, big yawn. Completing the square. So this is where we are coming back with completing the square. So let's see here. First, we want to write f of x is 0. Completing the square is going to help us rewrite this into vertex form, which is really nice. Okay? So the first step is we're going to move the c term, which is the 5 here. Let's subtract 5 from both sides. I'm going to go and draw a line of equality just to kind of help us out a little bit. Alright, so now I have -5 equals x squared minus 8x, and then I have this blank here. So the next step is we need to add b over 2 squared to both sides. Now our b over 2, our b is -8. Divide that by 2 and square it. -4 squared is going to be 16. I'm going to move this down here just because my other problem is up there. Okay, so I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Alright, so now this is -5 plus 16 is going to be 11. X squared minus 8x plus 16. Now we're going to do 2 steps here. Okay, just because I'm almost out of room. I'll make it a little bit smaller. Let's see here. Okay, so we'll do 1 step, just kidding. I don't want to confuse you. So I'm going to remind you what vertex form looks like. Alright, so vertex form is maybe something out in front, x minus h squared plus k. Alright, again, here the a is just 1. So that makes it a little bit easier. So now what we want to do is rewrite as x plus b over 2 squared, which in this case our b, again, was a -8. So x plus -8 over 2 is just x minus 4 squared. So I'm going to rewrite this as my complete square, x minus 4 squared, and that is equal to 11. Now we are so close to having it in vertex form. The only thing is up here, whenever we had the f of x, we changed it to a 0. I want that to be a 0 again. So what we are going to do is subtract this 11 back over to the side. So now we're going to end up with 0 equals x minus 4 squared minus 11. And that is our k. So I'm going to write right here, we moved k back to the correct side. In this case, it was the right side, like the side on the right. But sometimes you might have it set up a little bit differently. So now, since earlier we had changed f of x to 0, and remember, f of x is just y. That's all it is, it's just a y. I'm going to change it back to f of x, or you could even write y if you'd like. And see here now, this is our function in the complete square form. So let me tell you something. In Desmos, if you go to graph this and you graph this one, they should be the exact same parabola. So that's a really good way to check that you completed the square correctly. Okay, to graph both of those functions and make sure that they're the exact same. So now here, what this gives us is our vertex. So just like above in our table, it's the opposite of whatever the number is here, and the k is what it is. So the h is not -4, the h is +4, and the k is -11. So that is your vertex. So the vertex is h comma k. Remember, I get the h from up here and the k here in our little vertex form. Okay? So we can use completing the square to find the vertex. We don't solve for x here because we're not asked to solve for x, but we're finding the vertex. So I recommend that you try to do this one on your own. Okay? Pause the video and give it a shot. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. So instead of h of x, I'm going to write that as a 0. Remember, h of x is just a function of, they chose the letter h here. Usually like f, g, h are the function letters. So this one is normally y. Okay? So here, what we're going to do, oops, the first step is to move the c. So you know what? Honestly, technically, some students like Khan Academy is just going to literally scoot the c off to the side. Like that. And just get it out of the way. So let's try that. So we're going to just move it out of the way. Like that. And we're just going to kind of bring it along for the ride. So we're just going to write 0 equals x squared plus 6x and then this blank. And actually, guys, in this case, if we just move it off to the side, we don't need to change this to a 0. And you'll see why in a minute. We're not going to do anything on the left-hand side. Okay? So what is going to happen here is we're going to change up a few of our things here, which gets a little tricky. But I do want to show you this way just because Khan Academy does it this way. So here now it says add b over 2 to both sides. So I mean, we could add it over to the left side. So let's see what this would look like. So in this case, our b, and this one is a +6. So 6 over 2 squared is 3 squared, which is 9. Okay. So I'm going to add 9 right here. And then technically I would be subtracting 9 here, or I'm sorry, adding 9 here. But since I want everything to be over here on this side, then that would mean I would have to subtract the 9 back over. So this is Khan Academy's logic. This is what they do. So if I add the 9 on the right side, I can't actually just add 9 and leave it, right? You have to do the same thing to both sides. But to make this work is I could subtract 9 as well. Because 9 minus 9 is 0. So technically I'm adding 0 to the right side. So in order to be able to complete the square, I need that there. Okay, I need to be able to write that as a complete square. So I need it to be x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then we have this crazy little piece over here, the -1 minus 9. We're just going to keep that going along for the ride. That's -10. That's going to be our k. That is our k. So normally we would have it over here on the right-hand side, but instead of doing that step, you can just keep it going over here, but you have to make sure that you cancel those two out. So I added the 9 to be able to complete my square here. Okay? And then I have to subtract it as well because my other terms here are still on the same side. Okay, so this is how Khan Academy does it. All right, so technically this one was not to both sides. This one was just add b over 2 squared. And since I would add it, I would have to subtract it as well. Okay? All right, so hopefully that makes sense a little bit, because you will see that if you use the hints on Khan Academy ever. So here now it says rewrite as the complete square form. So in this case, it is not -8 as my b. I have 6 as my b. 6 over 2 is 3. Okay, so this is going to be written as x plus 3 squared. And then I still have that minus 10 that's just hanging out. This would be a positive 10 over here that I would end up having to subtract over. But we just kept it all on the right side, which is totally fine, as long as you make sure that you do the opposite operation here to keep it balanced. Okay, so now this says move k back to the correct side. We don't have to do that. We already kept k right here. We're good. We're all done. This is it. So this way is a little bit faster. You don't have to move as many terms, but the way we did it over here would probably make more sense to you. Okay, just because we have done it this way, but you see that there are more steps involved here than there is here. This is in vertex form right here. That's vertex form. Over here, this is vertex form. And you can do it either way, guys. Either way is fine. This is the most comfortable way. This is the way you know how. This is kind of a shortcut way. Okay, and it's definitely less steps if you notice that. I did explain, so it felt like it took longer because I was explaining why we add the 9 and subtract the 9 on the same side, because then you're technically just adding 0, right? So here our vertex, since this is a 3, our h is actually a -3. And then our k is a -10. So because our formula is x minus h, x minus the h is what would be right here. Okay, so in order for this to become a positive 3, in order for this to become a positive 3, this must have been x minus -3 to become x plus 3. A double negative makes a plus, positive. Okay, so that's why we have a -3 for the h. So this is your h comma k. That vertex will look something like this on the graph. That would be your vertex right there. -3 comma -10. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and look at these other two examples here. These are the last two on page 3. Perfect. Okay, so here it says write the equation of each graph in vertex form. So first I want to jot down, so vertex form is f of x equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Okay, so my vertex is right here. This is 2, 1. So this is my h, this is my k. All right, so my h I'm going to plug in right there, and my k is going to be right there. So here I have f of x equals, I don't know the a yet, we'll talk about that in just a second, x minus 2 squared plus 1. So that is my k here, and this is my h. Remember, I kept it as the opposite. Okay, that's what I did. Since the h is actually a positive 2, it should say x minus 2 in the formula. So now for the a value, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. There are a few things you could do. We could solve for a. All right, so if we change this to y, we need to solve for a. So we can plug in a point x comma y to solve for a. Oops. So let's just pick any point here. You cannot use the vertex though, because that one's already on it. But here we have the point 3, 0. Okay, so here we'll put y 0. We're solving for a. x is 3, right? Because x comma y, 3 comma 0. And now we just have to simplify this. So here we have 0 equals, okay, a times 3 minus 2 squared is 1 squared plus 1. 1 squared is just 1. So here, a times 1 is just a. Now we're so close, we just have to subtract 1 from both sides, and that is our a value. Let me move this stuff up real quick. Okay, so here 0 minus 1 is negative 1, and all that's left here is a. So our a value is negative 1. So that's what goes right here. Okay, so now we can write our formula. F of x equals negative 1 times x minus 2 squared plus 1. And that's because we solve for it, and it's a negative 1 because it's upside down. Okay, and it's not skinnier or wider than the typical parabola, than the parent graph parabola. And this was our k, and this was our h. Oops, this was our h. Okay, so that's another thing, is you can always solve for a by just plugging in a point after you know the vertex, and you have the vertex in the formula. All right, so let's do the same thing with this absolute value. Okay, so the absolute value vertex form is very similar to the parabola. So absolute value would be f of x equals a times the absolute value of x minus h plus k. Okay, so here the first thing is the vertex. So this vertex is negative 5 comma, so negative 5, 6, 7, negative 7. Okay, so this is the h, this is the k. So this is going to be f of x equals a, absolute value, x minus negative 5 plus negative 7. So I'm showing you this to show you how we plug it into the formula. And again, why the h becomes the opposite sign of what the h actually is whenever it's in the formula. So this will be f of x equals a, absolute value, x minus negative 5 is just x plus 5, plus negative 7 is just minus 7. Okay? So now, for this a, I want to show you a little shortcut, okay? We know that the basic absolute value from the vertex, you go over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1. This is the parent graph. Over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1. The parent graph always goes over 1, up 1. So if you notice it's the parent graph, you don't need to waste your time solving for a. A is just 1. It's the parent graph, okay? So this would just be f of x equals 1 times the absolute value of x plus 5 minus 7, which we can just rewrite as, instead of 1 times something, you don't need the 1. It's the absolute value of x plus 5 minus 7 would be this equation. Okay, so this definitely takes a lot of practice, so make sure that you finished the Khan Academy on shifting parabolas that I assigned last week. That is so important. You guys will have a quiz in your next class with me on that Khan Academy, okay? So hopefully this helped. This will help you with your Khan Academy that is assigned